What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to show you an ultimate Freyna build which uses a new mod that came with the October 10th patch for ultimate Freyna, which is really good at killing void intercept bosses. Now, I released a video yesterday where I covered a build for her that is very good at the new 400% infiltrations and just mobbing in general if you're doing spec ops or something like that. So this would be the other side of the coin. This build would be for specifically targeting Colossus fights. Now, the thing that was holding me back was the exact Transcendent mod that I needed, and this is Venom Injection. Now, this is the mod that's going to allow you to do this build or to be able to push out the damage that you're going to be seeing in some of the footage that's running in the background. But first things first, before we get into all of the detail and everything like that, I'm just going to leave this here so you can take a screenshot if you just want to do that and dip. Otherwise, if you'd like to understand a little bit more behind the choices of the mods and the weapon to use and basically the rest of the items, and stick around and let's discuss. So first things first, this is a gun build for Freyna. So even though you are going to be stacking things like skill power and so on, the main point is that you're going to be using a weapon to kill the enemies. You're not going to be using your toxic and your poisons to essentially kill them. Now, when we look at the exact build here, the glue that ties it all together is essentially Venom Injection, which is a brand new Transcendent mod which was added for ultimate Freyna. Again, I want to mention the fact that this then means that this build is for ultimate Freyna, and if you do not have ultimate Freyna, you are not going to be able to equip this Transcendent mod, and so therefore you wouldn't be able to build this. But that being said, basically what Venom Injected does is it's quite a lot, right? But it's basically saying that it gives you an effect called Toxin or Toxic Sense. This is a buff that you have as soon as you activate it, and you get this by activating your second ability. Now, what this does is it inversely makes you more powerful for the amount of HP that it drains from you, because it has a constant HP and MP drain that it basically runs. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to figure out a way that we can basically benefit the most from this effect, but also have it not kill us or make us basically die from one shot from an enemy or something like that. And the easiest way to do that is, of course, to stack shields. So it's one of the things that we're going to concentrate on doing. Interestingly enough, this also means that you are essentially also building this Freyna to be fairly decent at the new Deathstalker fight, since building shield on your Descendant is one of the best ways for you to survive the new Deathstalker Void Intercept boss. So this is also a build that you can use for that, and it deals a fair amount of damage. However, the fact being that you're of course dependent on your fourth skill. Now lastly, I also just want to mention the fact that the reason why building shield works so well here is that you'll see that Toxic Sense, basically what it does is it increases your skill power and increases your toxic resistance, your toxin resistance, but it also gives shield recovery per second and a slight increase to that. So this is actually just also going to feed your shield and basically just make you a little bit more tanky. I mean, it's only 5%, but it's still something at least. And then also what is very important is that when you then shoot enemies while you have Toxic Sense active, it's actually going to reduce their toxic resistance, which is good because that just means you're going to be dealing more damage to them. But the name of the game here is essentially running into a fight, activating your second, and then as soon as the Void Intercept boss is ready to take damage, you activate Venom Baptism, you put all the bullets into him, and you basically one clip the boss. Now, if there's a situation that you don't kill them in one clip, you have two options. At this point in time, you could basically just shoot them like normal with your weapon, and then you'll be able to still deal some damage and so on. Or if you're playing solo, you just jump off the map and end yourself, and then basically you get your skill back and you can go for your second clip. But all of the footage that you're seeing in the background right now, and that you will continue to see through this video, basically has me one clipping the enemy. Of course, I'm playing solo. If you are in groups, the Void Intercept bosses have more HP, and then it's not going to be possible to do that. But this is a fantastic build to farm those Void Intercept bosses very easy, and in a way this is very similar to me to something like Lepic. I think of using Freyna the same way that I would use Lepic in these kinds of situations. So when we look at the build itself, we are divided into two kinds of mods that we're stacking. We're stacking survivability mods, and we're feeding that into Overwhelming Shield. Overwhelming Shield, what it does is it reduces you down to 1 HP, but then gives you a massive amount of shield, and then all additional plus HP that you get either from external components or from your other mods will actually increase your shield more. So you'll see here at the bottom, let me move my face quickly, I'm sitting on 50 15,000 shield, which is fairly decent. We got some defense as well, about 6k, but the main point is this 15,000 shield is what's going to be keeping you alive, and that's essentially why we can be so tanky. Now, we are also going to be then doing the usual increased shield mod, because this boosts this more. This is kind of like a partner to overwhelming shield. Whenever you take overwhelming shield, it is a good idea to take increased shield and also increased HP. Then we also partner that with HP conversion, and these are essentially our 4 survivability mods: HP conversion, shield, increase shield, overwhelming shield, and increase HP. Those 4 together are basically your defensive options, and they're what make you so tanky in combination with the external components that we're going to look at just now. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to be stacking some damage. Since your damage is related to your skill power, so it's not the strength of the weapon that you're using. So there's actually only a few mods that you're going to be putting on the weapon. The main damage from this actually comes from skill power. So that's why it's also super important for us to still stack our skill power as high as we can. And we do this by putting focus on tech in, which gives us tech skill power modifier and some cooldown. We put focus on toxic in, which gives us toxic skill power. And then we do the same thing for the 2 amp mods, toxic amplification and tech amplification. Now, these 4 together give us quite a nice bump in damage. And then we round that out by also putting venom syncytium, I always struggle to pronounce that word, in there as well, which gives us another little bump in our toxic skill power as well. Last but certainly not least, we have dangerous ambush here. Dangerous ambush is really good for the main reason that when you'll see the footage of me killing these bosses, you'll notice that I target their weak points and I basically shoot them so that they go into an immobilized state, which is what happens when you destroy a weak point. And at that point in time, you're going to get this massive 49.8% skill power injection from dangerous ambush, and that's what's going to give you that last little bit of, you know, juice that you need to get over the finish line and essentially kill the enemy in one clip. Now, these mods all together, this is the package itself, and the good thing is, if you've built my build for the Spec Ops one, then there's only a few mods that you actually need to change. A lot of the core of the build stays the same, and so we only really swap out like 4 of the other mods. And that means that this is also a little bit more, I mean, it's budget friendly, might be stretching it a bit, but it means that there's not that much conversion that you have to do between all the mods and everything like that. And setting this up to run alongside your Spec Ops gives you a nice, well-rounded ultimate Freyna that's really good at dealing with mob type situations and basically killing, you know, lots of enemies super fast in like 400% infiltrations or Spec Ops mode or something like that. But then also is really good at farming the solo bosses, as I call them, which is like the first 4 basically that you have. Make no mistake, you can play this build in group situations and you are going to have a fairly decent amount of damage that you can dump on to the intercept boss. But then of course you're not going to be able to pull off like these, you know, one clip kills and that sort of thing, and that means that you're going to have to actually play your character and learn to avoid damage and learn mechanics and all that stuff. But when you have your 4th skill off cooldown, you are going to be able to just absolutely flatten the boss's HP bar and deal a lot of damage. But when it comes to weapons, we need to think about Ultimate Freyna's setup in this way the same as Lepic. So if you're familiar with how you build Lepic, it's very similar here. The main thing is that your weapon, all of the mods on the weapon don't really count. There's very few mods which count, because essentially the 4th skill, Venom Baptism, counts as a different weapon completely. So that means that yes, you could use things like Secret Garden and stuff like that, which are some of the core weapons which are really good for Freyna, but the problem is that you're not actually going to be getting the unique effect from Secret Garden or anything like that. You're actually just going to be inheriting some stats from the weapon. The only 2 stats that you inherit from the weapon that you have equipped when you hit the 4th button, the 4th ability, is you get the fire rate and the clip size. Now, both of these things are super important, because clip size obviously means you're gonna have more bullets. You start with a base of 45, and we can easily see that if we go here and we look, we'll see we start with 45 shots, and that's what you get in your clip when you activate the 4th ability. Now, if you have some additional mods on your weapon that you have in your hands when you activate this, that have clip size increase or rounds increase, magazine increase, whatever you want to call it, it's gonna give you more than 45 45 shots. Using the configuration that I'm going to show you for your weapon, you're going to have 85 shots, so basically almost double. So in the case here, I think an LMG is your best weapon of choice to use. In my case here, I'm using Enduring Legacy because I've had this configured for Freyna for a super long time, but you can of course use anything else. You can use an Albion cavalry gun, you can use Secret Garden if you want. The main point is there's a certain mod configuration that you need to be putting in. The 4 mods that you need to be looking to slot into your weapon, whichever weapon you use, is Sharp Precision Shot, which is really good because as soon as you hold in your trigger and start shooting, it's going to ramp up and shoot your bullets faster, which means you're going to dump your load into the boss a lot quicker. Now, this is why you can see kind of like a ramp up effect happening when you hold down the trigger and start shooting, but it's also why it's important for you to not like shoot, pause, shoot, pause. You need to take your aim, press in the button and hold it and squeeze out all 85 rounds into the enemy, or at the very least until it falls over. The other 3 mods that we need to be considering is our 2 rounds mod. So we have a blue rounds per magazine, which is expand weapon charge, which you should have, and then any of the purple ones. You don't have to use weapon tuning. There are actually more options available. So you can also use, for example, concentrate support ammo. Basically, you just want this additional 30% rounds per magazine. The second stat there is not really that consequential and shouldn't affect your choice. So whichever one of these you have basically leveled up, whether it's weapon choosing or weapon tuning or concentrate support ammo, go ahead and throw that in. And then last but not least, we also have fire rate up here as well, because this is also a trait or a stat that the 4th ability inherits from the weapon. Last but not least, let's quickly talk reactor and external components. With a reactor, your absolute best in slot is of course additional skill attack when attacking Colossus, super important, and then you can either have toxic skill power boost ratio there, or you can have tech skill power boost ratio. Those are in my opinion the 2 best guard rolls that you can have. So having Colossus and toxic, or Colossus and tech. Once you have that, and if you have that on a rare reactor, you're good to go. All of the footage that you've been seeing of me killing these bosses have been with me wearing this reactor, but of course if you can get it on an ultimate reactor, you know, go for it, because that's actually going to be even more juicy damage. In terms of the external components, you could use pretty much anything here, but the point is you want to be focusing on taking external components that have a lot of HP, additional HP on there, because that's going to feed into your shield, because you want to be putting as much plus HP on your gear and on your mods so that you create yourself a nice big overwhelming shield. If you don't have a lot of HP rolls on here, then you're going to start noticing that your roll on your shield, and I realize now that you guys can see here, so let me just do this quickly. You're seeing that you're not going to get near the 15,000, and I mean you can obviously stack this higher as well, but you're not going to get near to this amount. And the point is, remember, you are on 1 HP, so you want to be making this as thick as you can so that you don't basically die by just standing in a little bit of fire or something like that. I would say the sweet spot is more than 12,500. If you have more than 12,500, you're pretty much good to go, I would say, and then anything past that just becomes a lot more comfortable. But in terms of the set that I'm using here, this is exactly the same set that I was showing yesterday when I was doing my mobbing build, and that's because I want something that's super tanky so that I don't have to worry about, you know, taking a little bit of damage or standing in a little bit of fire. So you'll notice that I have mods which have max HP on them, and then some resistances. Max MP is good as well, just to give yourself a little bit of flexibility on your sensor. And then, like I said yesterday, Annihilation Memory is really good because it's the only memory item, the only memory slot that has 646 HP on its roll, on its main roll. Like for example, if we look at this Invader Memory here, you'll see that it rolls 484 on its max HP. So I don't know if this is a bug or something that they didn't correct or something like that, but Annihilation Memory, this memory slot here, is the only one that rolls this high on max HP. And I know it's not a lot, it's only like a 200 difference, but the point is that 200 translates into a lot of survivability when you feed it into Overwhelming Shield. And then last but not least, I'm also using Slayer here. So you can absolutely use 4-piece Slayer. The additional 26.1% skill power is very cute, and since skill power directly affects your damage, it's a really good idea if you are lacking a little bit of fucking oomph to do that. But of course, Slayer itself does not have as juicy HP rolls as you're seeing on the rest of these components here, which means you're gonna have to like straddle the line between being a little bit less tanky and possibly, you know, going down a lot easier than you would probably do if you have these 4 components on. That being said, if you're only using the build to farm those first 4 Void Intercept bosses, or to basically do, let's say, only the first couple of Void Intercepts in groups, then I think you can get away with being a little bit less tanky, because those Void Intercept bosses don't deal that much damage. But I would absolutely consider making yourself super tanky if you plan on fielding this into something like Deathstalker, because Deathstalker is just a massive amount of damage, so you want this shield to be as big as you possibly can get. Like for example, the Enzo that I used to farm that boss has 27,000, so almost double this, and I still feel like I would like more. So obviously you need to be sure that you're very tanky for that. Don't be a burden on your team by going in there with like fucking 4,000 shield or something like that and getting one tapped like every time the boss looks at you. But that's it for the video and the build. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know how you've set up your ultimate Freyna. Are you enjoying the character? What is the thing about the new patch that you're enjoying the most? I think the 400% infiltrations are a massive W. People have been playing the shit out of them, people including me, having a huge amount of fun with those. It's just a great way to level up weapons, great way to level up your character. It's really cool to test builds and see how far you can push them and how fast you can kill stuff. So super enjoyable. Other than that, it's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Till next video, fucking cheers.